So for myself, my name's Alex Fillingham. I'm an account director from a company called Civiteq. There's a bunch of slides about Civiteq in the presentation, so I won't take away from my own thunder there. I've spent nearly 20 years delivering digital transformation across a whole host of sectors, either as a project or program manager, or latterly as a commercial lead. The last 8 years of my time have been spent delivering into the public sector specifically. So hopefully I've got a little bit of background and knowledge that can help with the conversation today. Gavin, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Alex, and yeah, thanks everyone for joining. So my name is Gavin Muncaster. I'm the Director of Digital Services for Southampton City Council. Been working there since 2020, and prior to that was in the digital space at the Isle of Wight Council for 20ish years. So a long run in the digital world in local authority, and we've been doing a lot of work with Civiteq over a number of years, but certainly in more recent times around our transformation journey.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so today we're hoping to cover 3 main subject areas with the Q&A at the end. So I'll talk you through who we are as an organisation. I'll spend roughly 15 minutes doing that, depending on how quickly or how slowly I speak. Then we'll hand over to Gavin to talk about Southampton and their journey to a balanced budget. And there's some really interesting insights from Gavin in that section, probably the most interesting section of the 3. And then at the end, we'll start to try and dive into some specific examples from the work that Civiteq have done with Gavin and the team at Southampton City Council. So roughly 15 minutes split between the 3 subject areas with Q&A at the end. So Civiteq. So for those of you who don't know who Civiteq are, we were established back in 2015 as an organisation called Southampton Advisory, started by three gentlemen, Tony Summers, David Bryant and Andrew Rogers, all with a huge background in the public sector. They'd spent years working either for various public sector organisations or for themselves, and had also been involved in a membership organisation called Southampton, the Society for Innovation, Modernisation and Digitisation. And Southampton as a membership organisation did a whole host of cross-member consulting, really, and it had reached a point where spinning out a commercial subsidiary of Southampton felt like the right thing to do. So Tony and David, alongside Andrew, started that back in 2015. Very, very quickly, they picked up their first large contract. This was with one of the London boroughs, supporting their implementation of a platform called Oracle Fusion, which some of you may well be aware of. That programme was commissioned in 2015, went live in 2016, and thereafter have followed a whole host of projects and programmes of a variety of different sizes between the inception of the company in 2015 and to date now. Our first large digital programme started in 2017, working across front-facing services and the kind of back office enabling services, the corporate services that that particular council had. Over the next 2.5 years, the company grew. Its turnover hit 11 million in 2019, just before COVID. We switched in COVID to being a 100% remote business, and through a little bit of stabilisation, then grew to over 100 colleagues in December 2022, with over 100 customer engagements completed in that time. So you can see 7 years, 100 projects of a variety of different sizes. It's a decent growth for an organisation of our size. In 2022, the leadership of the company started to think about the long-term growth and stabilisation of the company. So sought some outside investment that came from a company called BGF. If you're interested, they've got a very good website which describes what they do and how they invest and the criteria that they tend to place on the investments and the organisations that they invest in. And following BGF's investment, we on our first major programme into one of the large central government departments on the shared service programme, culminating in February in this year with a rebrand of Southampton Advisory into Civiteq, the organisation that is speaking to you guys today. And really the driver behind creating the Civiteq brand was to differentiate ourselves and our evolved offering from where we had originally started as Southampton Advisory, and hence the name of the organisation that is speaking to you today. So a little bit about Civiteq as a company. So we're a business integration partner. What that means is we work alongside technology vendors, alongside implementation partners, but importantly alongside customers to integrate primarily technology-based change into those organisations. We help ensure success in programmes, and you'll see throughout the little talk I'm going to give some of the examples that is our raison d'etre. Realising business value is absolutely one of the things that we focus on in all of our pieces of work. And as I say, we're a public sector focused organisation. So public services runs through all of our consultants. Reason for working and therefore supporting the public sector is absolutely the most important thing for us. As I say, we're a business integrator that fits alongside both customer teams and also importantly the vendors and their integrators. We are 100% independent. What that means is that we have relationships with a whole host of vendors. You'll see some of the names on the screen might be familiar to attendees today, but there are other vendors and other organisations that we work with as well. Particularly with our background in corporate services and in finance, HR, payroll, procurement. Some of the big names there: SAP, Oracle, Workday, Microsoft, and to a lesser extent, some of the smaller vendors, Technology One, for example, Capita, Civiteq, and others in that space. Absolutely vendors that we work alongside and have relationships with. Importantly, our teams integrate into our customers' programme teams. In fact, on a number of engagements, we've had feedback at the end that our customers weren't actually aware that consultants from Civiteq were not part of their own organisation. That's how integrated we become into a programme. And some of the value that we add, as well as bringing our core capabilities and skills and delivering great business value for our customers, is that we can hold those integrators and those vendors to account because we're independent. And we know ultimately what is best for our customers. So fit nicely in the middle there. As I say, we've got two core areas of expertise really. One being ERP or enterprise resource planning, as we all know, a core business capability for any organisation of any size. And we can support organisations and do support organisations through an ERP change journey right from the very inception through to embedding a new platform, a new way of working into business operations and delivering value and business benefit from that change. We also have a second offering. I like to describe it as anything that is outward facing. If ERP is inward facing, digital and service transformation focuses on outward facing services and those service users out in our communities who really need the help of the public sector in order to thrive and live the best lives that they can. The journey can be slightly different, or it can be similar to an ERP journey, depending on the problem that our customer is facing or the outcome that our customer is trying to drive towards. For example, we can be advising on a strategy, but we can also be helping to implement a particular change with an outcome. For example, creating a single view of a child in a local authority. Both ERP and DST, as we call it, rely on a really specific set of skills. And what I'll do now is just quickly talk you guys through those skills and capabilities and where some of our customers have seen benefit from them. So core to business integration, I think right at the start is understanding the strategy and the business outcomes that any organisation is trying to drive towards. when they're embarking on a potential technology change journey or an organisational change journey. So at the very start of an engagement, our consultants will help to understand what that strategic direction needs to be, gain corporate buy-in, gain stakeholder buy-in, engage across the business in order to do that. And certainly for our local government customers, that engagement includes both officers and members. And in a number of cases, we have presented at a committee or cabinet in order to work alongside our customers. But ultimately building a case for change that can gain buy-in and investment. Moving to the right, projects and programs. Clearly, when you are embarking on a change program, you need the capability to execute that change journey, to manage risk and to manage the resources from a whole host of different organisations, whether that's a vendor, whether that's an integrator, or whether that's internal resources. Our project and program managers come with lots of certificates and letters after their names and have great credentials when it comes to delivering really complex change programs in local authorities. And as Gavin might touch on later, you know, those change programs continue to evolve and continue to drive different outcomes. Local government reorganisation being a prime example that's creating a whole host of potential risk and reward in local authorities at the moment. Underpinning certainly some of the early discovery and definition work that we do are our business analysts. You know, they really have deep dive expertise across a whole host of service areas, can understand the challenges that that teams and individuals are facing in their day-to-day working lives, and can articulate the findings in a really business-focused way, whether that's a set of requirements for a future solution, or they've mapped a process and they've understood that actually there are some gaps in that process that if we fix them would create better outcomes for those service users. The BAs are absolutely critical to complex change programs. If BAs focus internally, service designers and organisation designers focus perhaps a little bit more outwardly. You know, they help to answer questions like, how should we be structuring ourselves? How can we deliver the outcomes that matter to our service users? What capabilities, skills and capacity do we need in order to deliver those outcomes? How should work flow through our functions? How should we support those functions? How can we move to a new operating model? How can we move to a new world? And using techniques like user research and design thinking or service design, our consultants can really help our customers through that process. For example, a local authority we worked alongside recently moved from a shared service into an in-sourced ERP operating model, and we helped them to design the future operating model of their finance, their HR, their payroll and their procurement services, with a successful go live on the planned go live date, which was a very successful outcome for quite a complex program. And lastly, on this side, business change, you know, it's a big area for Civiteq as an organisation, and generally we find that a functional area in an organisation's capabilities that perhaps is slightly lacking in resources. You know, when times are hard and budgets need to be cut, some of those business analysts, change manager roles tend to be removed from an organisational structure. Civiteq has our own change management approach. It's called the mindset model. Information on that is available on our website for those who are interested. But it includes a variety of interventions and techniques that ultimately can take people in an organisation through a change journey to a successful outcome, whether that's adopting new technology or adopting new ways of working. The ultimate goal of our change consultants is that successful adoption, but it's also the realisation of business value, business benefit. For example, the successful implementation of an ERP platform at Southampton Council and the change journey that our change consultants took them through was so successful that they have re-engaged us for a second phase of that programme, implementing new capabilities into their Oracle Fusion platform. Second set of capabilities, the data and insight. Clearly, we're all aware that data underpins everything that we do in our organisations. Our consultants support our customers alongside partners, our Simpsons Associates version 1, for example, are just two of the organisations that we work with on data journeys. We support a growth in data maturity within our customers. Clearly, artificial intelligence and automation is such a big subject matter for all of us. It's becoming a real part of day-to-day life. Data maturity is critical to being able to properly adopt automation and properly take advantage of artificial intelligence. So I mentioned Simpsons, for example, and their work on a single view of child in a northern local authority has been game-changing. Really being able to see all of the services that that child is currently consuming, and where there are gaps in the services that are being delivered to that child has enabled a much more efficient, cost-effective service for that local authority. Alternatively, version 1 have a great example of layering artificial intelligence over houses of multiple occupancy and finding efficiencies there in the service that they deliver. And as partners of ours, we work alongside them. The next two jigsaw puzzle pieces, I suppose, architectural, technical and architectural function, are the strategic or the operational view of how an organisation is structuring itself and its technology to meet its best outcomes. Some of those capabilities might well be cybersecurity and information governance, for example. So where architecture and technical is really the strategic view of the organisation, how are we working, how are our systems integrating together, our consultants will help and advise on a journey to better rationalise an overarching business architecture. The architecture and function capability is much more into the detail of specific solutions. So how can a new solution like a housing or asset management system best meet our needs? In large programs, testing and adoption are vital capabilities. Our consultants advise on testing strategy, advise on testing approach, and then work with users and subject matter experts from across an organisation and across the stages of implementation to best test a solution so that it can ultimately be adopted, whether that's functional testing, key user testing, or ultimately user acceptance testing and adoption. And the final box there, something we also see is in smaller programs of work, there might well not be a need for a large business integration partner, but you might need to have an assurance partner. And as an independent consultancy organisation like Civiteq, we can come in, we can assess a program, assess whether it's ready to adopt the change that you're trying to drive towards, and make some recommendations on exactly what you should be doing to meet your outcomes in that project or program. There are some examples of some of the public sector organisations that we have worked with across both local and central government. I've talked an awful lot. I think it's time for me to hand over to Gavin now. Gavin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, so we're going to do just a few slides around our journey from a position of needing to request exceptional funding from central government to achieving a balanced budget. Obviously, we did some of this work with Civiteq, hence us presenting together. But I'll take you through some of the challenges we faced, how we approached them, and some of the successes we had as a result of that. So, Alex, if you want to move on, please. So as a bit of background, and it feels a lifetime ago, but it was only last year when we went into our budget planning cycle for the 24-25 budget. As an organisation, we had a significant structural deficit in the budget. There'd been various decisions in the years leading up to it, which put us in a difficult position. We needed to request £39 million of exceptional financial support from central government to balance the 24-25 budget. And on top of that, there still remained a gap of around 10 million on top of this. So we didn't want to ask for too much EFS. Reserves had been reduced over a number of years. So we were in a position with limited reserves remaining to cover services. And as a result of that, we were at quite a significant risk of needing to, or the Section 151 officer of needing to issue a Section 114 notice. We really wanted to obviously avoid that position. So we took a number of actions to address that as part of the exceptional funding request done in preparation. So we established a completely independent improvement board that was made up of a number of external people who just sat and challenged everybody from chief exec down to the operational teams. The exceptional funding request was made to government, and we established a significant transformation program just to demonstrate that, well, to get things running, but also to demonstrate as part of that request we were serious in terms of tackling those financial challenges.
Gavin, can I just ask, can you clarify a section 114 notice for those of us that don't know what that is?
Sorry, yes. So section 114 would be where effectively the council is saying that it cannot set a balanced budget in the following year. So it doesn't have the funds or the income to set a balanced budget, which as a local authority we have to do legally.
Okay.
Usually that's issued.
Sorry, yeah.
And usually if that's issued, then central government will come in with their commissioners and effectively take over the running of the authority in that sense.
So that's fundamentally declaring that you're going to be bust. So
yeah, it's often presented in when you see it in the news that X number of councils have declared they're bankrupt. It's that background. So technically we're not allowed to get in that position, but that's the trigger for that.
Thanks. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks. Yeah. So I mentioned the transformation program. Obviously, with the figures noted, we had a lot. We had a big challenge there. So our transformation program, some key things about it. We knew with the scale of challenge, it had to be council wide. So Southampton City Council is a unitary authority, so we provide all services, whether that's from social care to planning, housing, highways, etc. We knew with the scale of things that it wasn't going to be possible to solve that with one directorate or one service area. So it was a true council-wide programme. There were 7 portfolios, each of those aligned to the relevant exec director. And beneath that, we had 28 programmes of work. And I think at one point on the digital side, we were mapping dependencies, and we had somewhere near 100 dependencies of various projects, which we knew we would have to support as part of that. So I think it was quite obvious to us that that was too big a task for us to do alone if it was to be successful. And so the council commissioned a strategic transformation partner that was Newton Europe. So their background is more in the social care space, and they'd done some good work the previous year with our social care team. So they became our overall strategic transformation partner. But also because we had a number of real specific areas to look at, we did get some specialist support in certain areas. So Civiteq was one of those specialist areas, supporting us with some service design and digital architecture support. There were a couple of other specialist areas in the housing space and social housing side. So that was the makeup of our transformation program. Okay. And then it was described and thought of very much as a program. We called it Adapt, Grow, Thrive. It was set up rapidly with outline business cases for June 24. And we acknowledged that really there were going to be 3 phases to it. The first was to adapt. We needed to do some work to get the basics right, bridge that structural deficit. So the seeds of change, because there was culture and behaviours as much as technology and financing. And we reviewed our finance approaches and put some really strong financial management principles and approaches in place as part of that. The second phase was, once those basics were done, were around how could we grow. So actually, if we've stabilised the services, how can we then grow those services? So if it was a revenue generating service, how can we increase that revenue? If it was around the tax base, how could we attract inward investment to the city so that our tax base in terms of council tax and business rates would grow, so that we could really change the narrative, so it wasn't just about council cuts all the time. It was around bridging a financial gap. And then where we are, I guess, on our journey to still is the final stage of that, which would be the thrive. So as a city, how do we thrive? Be a strong finances, good services, and a strong set of values. I think we're probably somewhere in the grow space still, if we're being honest on it, but that was the kind of nature of the programme, accepting that there were a series of steps we'd need to go through. Okay, thank you, Alex. So I mentioned the kind of strong financial management. We put a number of things in place towards the end of 23-24 and into 24-25. We commissioned an external review with CIPFA. The improvement board, which I mentioned, was put in place. We established a cost control panel, and as part of that, for a period of time, every spend over £50 had to go through the cost control panel, and that was reviewed by the CFO and the chief exec. So obviously there were a couple of exceptions just to make sure safety was maintained in areas like social care, but everything else over £50 went through that cost control panel. We slightly changed the approach with budget managers. So every budget manager was signing an accountability statement at the start of the year before they were given their budget. And so if they looked like they were overspend, it was very clear that it was up on the budget owner to come up with their recovery plan. And then on a directorate by directorate basis, we had cash limited budgets. So at the start of the planning year, each exec director was given a cash limit to their budget, and if sort of real clear message that if somewhere in, so my directorate is called enabling services, corporate services traditionally, so we've got finance, HR, IT, procurement, and if for some reason IT were overspending as a directorate, we had to manage within our cash limit. So we had to come up with a recovery plan, and between the other areas of the service, we had to try and solve that issue ourselves. As a result of that, there were some really good successes. We did enable some in-year savings to the tune of 19 million. And what that meant is throughout the 24-25 year, we actually only needed to use 20.3 million of exceptional funding. I can explain a bit more about exceptional funding if that's useful. Ultimately, that meant less capital borrowing. So again, there's a reduction in the revenue cost of that. And the other knock-on for us in terms of the programme is it meant there was good confidence that the transformation programme was delivering savings. We delivered an initial £10 million, which was, I say, built the confidence that we were going in the right direction, and actually the programmes of work were delivering. We made a slight change to the budget setting process in that if a programme or a team declared that they were going to make a saving through their programme, that it was actually taken out of the budget at that point. So we didn't wait till the end of the project. If I declared I was going to save 500,000, that 500,000 was taken out, and that was the budget we were working to, and that really helped focus people's minds on delivery. And then, as noted, there was a real kind of strong focus on programme management. So monitoring those deliverables and the benefits, as well as real true identification of costs across those areas. Cool, thank you, Alex. So where did that put us? So going into this year, it did mean by the end of the 24-25 year, we were able to go into this year with a balanced budget. Balanced budget over the term of the medium-term financial strategy. There was that reduced requirement on exceptional funding on originally planned, and also we didn't have to go back to government again this year and say we needed to have more of that to continue. So that was a real success. As a result of the work, the kind of structural deficit has been removed, and so we're now back on that even keel. That's not to say we don't have our challenges. Obviously, since probably we created this slides, the world of LGR and devolution have come along, which has introduced a level of uncertainty. And with all of the best planning we can, certainly things like cost of living and the cost of services still goes up, and that causes us challenges. But certainly that kind of underlying structural deficit was resolved, and a lot of our kind of basic improvements were complete. So.
Sorry, I don't know whether this is a suitable pause or a question just popped up when you remember you made mention of the LGR. Presumably that's a local government review.
Yes.
The question is, are Southampton likely to be affected negatively or positively by the government fair funding review? Is that one and the same as the LGR?
So no, so they would be different things. There's a number of things going on. So you've got the fair funding review, which is where central government have looked at I guess my description of it, the split of how they share funding out across the country, and across different types of councils, so rural combined compared to city and so on. The prediction currently is that it will be favourable for the city council. I think with a recognition of things like the costs and numbers of clients in social care, for example, will be more fairly reflected. There is a slight concern with the recent changes in government that whether that will change that effect in terms of whether there becomes a more of a focus back again on London councils, but certainly the planning is based on the expectation there will be some level of positive outcome from that fair funding review. And I think the other bit as part of the fair funding review is the move to, at the moment, it's annual budgets from government. There's a move to 3 yearly, so that will really help with the planning side of things.
Thanks,
LGR,
Kevin.
local government reorganisation, completely separate process where, so with the kind of move into a removal of two-tier authority, so creating new, careful not to say merging, creating new councils as unitary authorities and the removal of districts and boroughs. So we will be impacted by that as well.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
No problem. Yeah, so I've talked sort of at a high level of what was achieved, but some examples of what we did. It was wide ranging. So with such a broad programme, there were a number of different areas where we either reduced costs, increased income, and so on. There was obviously a strong focus on financial benefits. That was essential because of the position we're in, but we did try and always remember ultimately we're here to serve our residents and businesses, so where possible we made sure the non-financial benefits were there as well. But some of our examples that helped from a budget side, so an improved single view of debt was created, and that allowed us to improve our collection rates and recovery, so that increased our recovery by around £2 million in the year. As a unitary authority, adults and children's social care is the lion's share of the budget, but there was a lot of work done to make sure that the right packages of care were in place across both adults and children. So appropriate care, making sure that, for example, in some services where the interventions are meant to be short term and getting people well enough to be back at home, we're really focused on, and that managed to reduce our care packages to the tune of around 4.7 million. Some more detailed focus around contract spend and management, which is around 0.3 million benefit, and there are more benefits forecast there, so just really looking at making sure we're exploiting the contracts to their full value. And we had a programme of asset disposal, so Southampton City Council has quite a large number of property assets, so we disposed of a number of those. We achieved in the first year 3.44 million. We've achieved a fair amount since, and one of the really sort of double benefits of that is it's meant we can use the capital receipts to fund some of our capital projects as opposed to borrowing, so you get that knock on again of reduced financing costs. And Alex and I have talked a number of times around what do we think made it successful this time, because often these programs aren't always don't deliver what we would like. So I think the exceptional funding support request to government and the potential to issue the section 114 notice did really focus people's minds. I think as I guess with a lot of organisations, a view that there's always a negative financial position and we at the end of the year it will be okay, but this one really made people understand that actually that we had to make some changes and really make a lot of effort on the finances. That wide-ranging programme, so everybody across the council knew they had a part to play, and there were different deliverables and different projects, but it really helped make sure that people didn't feel it was all on them. We certainly had strong scrutiny. The improvement board were robust in their challenges, and central government were obviously working with us because of the exceptional funding, and a kind of strong internal governance was put in place to make sure that, as well, I say strengthened because we always had that in place, but really strengthened and focused on the delivery of the transformation side. And we did have good partners. We had good partnerships with Newton and Civiteq, really just to make sure it was working with us to deliver, and not something where somebody was seen to come in and just do it to us as such. And that worked really well for us. Everybody bought in, and there was a lot of hard work by a lot of people, really. Everyone from, you know, our right on the ground, our waste collectors, our social care staff, my IT support staff, right up to the chief exec, knew they had their part to play. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. So what we'd like to do now, and just conscious of time and leaving time at the end for Q&A, we want to take you through in an example at Southampton, how you can start at quite a strategic level, but very, very quickly get to the point where you are identifying either options to increase revenue or options to create potential savings and efficiencies, or a mixture of both. So the next couple of slides will do that. Gavin, dive in at any point with interjections. So the starting point on this particular journey was a digital strategy. The digital strategy was designed to be something that focused minds, that was ambitious but not too ambitious. So it was an achievable strategy. It outlines a future operating model for Gavin's service that would deliver against the business plans that other business services had and continue to have. It designed a journey to that new operating model, but it also pointed to having the capability to then either do in-service reviews or to work on projects that would help to relieve financial pressure. So that was the starting point. We then moved into a phase of a number of different pieces of work, either in-service reviews, and I'll talk about two specific examples in a second, or trying to create some of the underpinning functions like enterprise architecture for Gavin and Southampton City Council, so that you can work at both a strategic level and an operational level to create the change that you need to. And ultimately, it fed into a programme of improvement that sat underneath the overarching transformation programme. So that improvement programme was about enabling IT and digital, and to a lesser extent the data team as well, who sit alongside Gavin's team, to help the organisation to achieve some of the benefits and some of the savings that they needed to. So some of the work that went into that digital strategy, and I'll fly through this, conscious that finance colleagues may not know as much about what goes into a digital strategy as others. So we assess the maturity of the council from a digital and IT perspective. What that means is going out and polling a range of people from the authority, polling them on a set series of questions in a number of different subject areas, really to baseline, this is how mature you are in areas like strategy, like technology management, data management, like collaboration. It brought
Gavin, I think we've lost.
Yeah, I think.
Are you able to pick
Alex,
up?
Yes, yeah, I'll pick up. I think Alex's concern of dropping out at the council have come true. So yeah, so we were doing an approach where for the strategy side, we did some discovery work, as Alex mentioned, around digital maturity assessment. We were then developing the strategy that was in line with best practice in terms of target operating model, and then we wanted to make sure there was a good delivery aspect to it. So where could we identify quick wins to demonstrate progress against that strategy, and some immediate deliverables, as well as some activities which we didn't put specific timelines because we weren't well planned enough, but kind of now next later activities. Outcome of that, we had an evidence-based roadmap for the council's digital journey. We were better able to make decisions around data and evidence rather than just gut feel. And we upskilled a number of our council digital teams across the board council digital teams and some of the service areas in terms of service design as a result of that. And because of the timing, it tied in well with our transformation, so it allowed us to kind of maximise our resource investments. I have the slides here, so.
If you have, are you able to share your screen? I don't know whether Suzanne, are you in the background to enable that? Are you okay? Gavin's moved it on, I think.
I know Alex.
Alex,
yeah.
Sorry, Alex has moved it on. Sorry, Gavin. Are you?
That's all right.
Are you okay to continue?
Oh, Alex is. It looks like he may be around, but just having a bit of an issue, maybe.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Ah, we
Hear
can.
you, Alex.
We can hear you.
Right. Sorry.
You're back on screen.
I'm back in the room.
Back on screen as well.
Sorry, technology challenges. Thank you, Gavin, for covering for me.
Right.
Okay, so then moving into two specific examples, so specific initiatives where we're looking for benefit, as I've talked earlier, and as Gavin has talked, ultimately the benefit at Southampton is either more revenue or saving money or a mixture of both. So we completed a rapid assessment of the parking department. One of the roles of the parking department is collecting parking charge notices in the city. The collection rate for Southampton is relatively low, certainly compared to other authorities, whether they are rural or city-based authorities. Over a 6-week piece of work, we assessed the ways of working, assessed the technology, assessed it against some of the benchmark data that was out there, and uncovered both some operational efficiencies, but also some potential opportunities to improve that would allow either greater collection of revenue or to remove some of those potential person days that were wasted. So you can see some stats on the screen. Overall, a potential to realise up to £2 million worth of additional revenue, but certainly 68 person days wasted as well creates an opportunity to improve efficiency and allow the teams to focus on a better efficient service. Underpinning that, certainly for the parking team, there's an opportunity to change the technology platform in a way that better integrates with other services as well. So as I mentioned earlier, from an architectural perspective, you're moving the council forward, you're becoming more mature in the way that service works on its own, but also in tandem with other services. So a really good example there. Another example, not necessarily looking for additional revenue creation opportunities, but an early discovery with the estate and asset management team who were going through a period of technology change with the question, could we consolidate systems? So a bit more of a technical discovery that, again, engaged staff, engaged the service to look at what technology platforms have we got, what are our requirements now of those technology platforms, do they meet those requirements, or if they don't, what options are there in front of us as a service to better meet those requirements. So an outcome for that particular service discovery was, yes, you can consolidate. One of the platforms you have got delivers, I think, about 85% of the requirements that that you have or could have going to market. So our recommendation would be to consolidate most of your work onto that platform and create a bit of a contract saving. But there's a set of capabilities that you might need to bring an additional module or additional functionality into your overall architecture. And Gavin, you can probably talk about the journey that particular team are on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly we're in the process of decommissioning one of our applications as a result. So there is a contract saving there, but I think the biggest difference there was we had the service design toolkit, which we'd created as one of our earlier initiatives, and it was the first time I think the asset and the state team had really taken a step back or been supported to take a step back and stop thinking about the shiny tool that they'd seen at a conference and so on, and just actually think about what was really important to them and the way they worked. And that was a really good outcome, because then when we have consolidated systems, they completely understand its capabilities and how it will help them, rather than just IT have told you you've got to get rid of one application and put another in. So that's been really, really positive. And I think the feedback to Civiteq, 'Tech, 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 I guess somebody that can speak something other than IT geek speak, which is always helpful. So,
thank you. Okay, as I said, trying to speed through some specific examples. We've reached the point where we go to Q&A.
Great.
If I can just move on to the next slide quickly, David, just in case people want it and need it. There are my details on the screen. We'll send them out afterwards as well, but if delegates want to quickly take a screen grab of that, and then I can stop sharing and we can have the Q&A.
And I thank you very much indeed, Alex, and Gavin. Thank you. Alex, we've got your contact information. Gavin, you may have so much to do that you won't want any questions bowling in on you, but is that something you could give to Suzanne?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll drop them into the chat as well, so people have got them directly.
Okay, because the reason why I ask is there's some naturally specific questions. Now I'll go to one that's how are pressures agreed or funding, example in the high cost of placement in children's. So I probably go back to the mindset aspect of getting everyone on the same page as to how things work. How did that really work? Because you've got the very commercial list of what we can do, parking, etc., to increase subs. But there's also these other areas, no doubt, many more that I don't even appreciate you're under.
Yeah, so if I give a children's services example, we have quite a low provision for children's homes in the city. So we were having to, particularly for young people with complex needs, we were finding we were needing to place quite a large number of people outside of the city at quite great expense, and really not the best outcome for them because it means they're further away from their support network and so on. So one of the initiatives there is we've actually bought a couple of properties within the city and converted those into our own children's homes, and so then we have they become Ofsted registered, and we have a registered manager within that home that kind of acts almost as the parent as such, and we can then place those young people within the city. So it's both a lower cost placement because it's in our control, it's something we own, so we're not paying large weekly fees, and also we feel that gives a much better outcome for the young people. On the adult side, an example would be there was some specific work done by Newton around our reablement service. So the idea there is very much that if somebody's had an operation or a stay in hospital, how can we get them independent again? And I think we were finding people were tending to stay within that service for a number of months rather than a number of weeks. So we were able just to put a goal tracking system in. So, okay, by the end of week 1, we want to support the client to be able to do their own washing, by week 2 to be able to be safe on their feet and get out of the house and do their shopping. And we found that really reduced that kind of engagement from months to weeks. And again, in our view, a better outcome because those people remained independent, could stay in their own home and be safe.
Yeah, so quite a portfolio of sort of in bringing stuff back inside of control instead of it being outsourced, etc., and thereby making savings there, but also providing more control. The next question is directories to pursue savings in new income to augment budgets. What was your experience with one? General request across all directories to look at savings, or 2, only request savings at directories where there may be potential for reducing the expenditure? And that must have been quite an interesting one.
There's been a I guess various approaches over the time. I think because of the financial position, there was a fairly blunt. We tried to make sure it wasn't salami slicing, but in reality, with the position, I think the start point for every exec director ultimately was based on a portion of the budget. Here's your target to aim for. That was the start point for everybody, and really challenged every directorate across the council to try and come up with some level of savings. Obviously, we were tasked with aiming to identify much more than 39 million, so that we could make some informed choices and those which would have the least negative impact on residents. But yeah, really, it was done across the board. Every director or directorate was given a target. in this time, so we're going into a phase 2 of our transformation programs. Because we're in that slightly better position, we're now looking at making them more thematic. So rather than targeting each directorate, we're saying we've got a theme of AI and automation, and so a target against the AI and automation theme as opposed to individual areas, and that side of things. So I think
Yeah,
because it gives us a little bit more freedom.
If I can just add to that, so given we've worked across a whole host of different authorities and departments, neither approach necessarily works or doesn't work. They just have different requirements on the organisation, particularly the governance within that organisation. So, you know, pointing back to the way Gavin described the overall governance and challenge that was set, particularly when directorates are being targeted with a specific set of savings, that's vital. What I have seen is thematic-based savings, when you don't have that governance in place, or you don't necessarily have the buy-in of all of the services, has perhaps a greater chance of not delivering as many savings as directorate-based savings. But ultimately, you can become much more specific under a thematic approach, and therefore could drive more savings than just saying, right, we're going to cut £500,000 from one budget and £5 million from another budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, Alex, and thanks for that, because that then brings us really to the next question, which is very well phrased. Of how did you overcome any political obstacles where it came to delivering the savings? As this is usually issues for councils, so councillors objecting to things that impact on their particular areas. So picking up on the mindset, picking up on the outward looking, the inward looking, between the two of you, how did you overcome that? And I know we're running short on time. We've still got about 6 minutes. One of the questions is, how is Southampton in comparison to all the others that are going through the particularly difficult areas? And Alex, you've probably got a bigger helicopter view, given that you've got over 100 plus people.
Shall I, if I pick up the political part again, and then Alex, if you want to pick up how you think Southampton fits. So we did a couple of things. I think there were a number of areas where we tried to identify budget savings we could do which wouldn't have an impact on political. So things like just getting on and collecting the right level of income from a parking side. It actually, interestingly, that one becomes quite political, but because we had the benchmark data to say, look, we're collecting something like 33% and typically people are collecting 60%, we could evidence that. And with that approach of having trying to put forward savings or proposals which were way above or above the actual requirement, so that then councillors could have a choice and a say in that. So we could present almost a menu of savings, and they certainly felt like, and they did have a say of, okay, we can accept that one, but we can't accept that one. So that was really key. Try and make sure we could give an element of choice so that they felt they had some ownership over those discussions.
Evan, thanks.
Yeah, from a helicopter perspective of the sector, it varies greatly, and it varies greatly depending on the colour of the political party that are involved. So generally, what we've seen, and people who've paid attention to local elections recently, councils that have now got either a majority or a governing minority from Reform are wanting to drive very, very different outcomes compared to an SNP-led authority or a Labour-led authority. What I've seen, particularly up in Scotland, is a lack of governance in that particular region, and a lack of focus on governance isn't driving as much transformational change and isn't driving as much cost saving. But a lot of those authorities have greater reserves to fall back on. In Southampton's case, you didn't have many reserves to fall back on, so you had to change. So the political buy-in was there. Politicians don't want to be in charge of an authority that goes bust. It really reflects badly on them. Whereas when there are reserves to fall back on, the drive of the change, the burning platform for change, perhaps is less there. So it's easier for politicians to decide not to do something. In a particular Scottish authority, for example, they had questions about closing public toilets, closing swimming pools, or converting swimming pools into different public-facing services. None of those were taken forward because it was just deemed to be too politically difficult for them to do that. So yeah, it's a really good question and actually a really tricky answer. Really tricky thing to answer.
Thank you both, and this perhaps to a certain extent leads on to the next question, which Gavin, you talked a lot about the changes made in 24-25 to deliver transformation. Which of the financial change management and budgeting have been made permanent to keep things in balance?
So we removed the cost control panel, so that's not been made permanent. But you can imagine the relief at that. To be fair, so we've kept the approach of, although we've termed it slightly differently. So that approach of accountability statements, so really putting the onus on the budget owners at the start of the year to make it really clear for them to manage strongly through the year and be responsible for any recovery plans if that goes off target. That's now permanently in place. It's been retermed. We're not using the phrase cash limited budgets anymore, but very much as a directorate by directorate approach. The first stance is still, if you've got an issue within one area of your directorate, can you solve it from within? So that's remained in place. And the part around if somebody commits to a saving, that actually that saving is taken out from the outset, so that it's not just kind of there in the budget and remains at the end. So again, the example, if I say I can save this year, I've just said I can take 50,000 out of the telephony budget, that will be taken out at the start rather than waiting to see if it happens at the end. So straight away it's gone, and again we're continuing with that on a permanent basis. That worked well.
Really a good call to action and a resetting of what's being delivered.
Yes.
We're fast coming into 13:30 UK time. But I think I've been given slight permission to go a little bit over. And this is one that perhaps fits both of yourselves. Is it possible to benchmark the success of Southampton Council? Because it does sound as if you've done a great job between you guys. Is it possible to benchmark the success of Somerset City Council to other local authorities? And how are you able to do that, therefore spread good practice?
That's actually not as easy a question to answer, is it, Catherine? Shall I give my observation as somebody who sees the sector, and then perhaps Gavin, if you talk more specifically. So, an attitude, I'll call it an attitude I sometimes encounter is, yes, we all deliver the same things, but actually we're very, very different in the way that we deliver it. So therefore, if you show me data from another council, but they do things differently, so that example doesn't matter to me. That attitude actually does exist quite a lot, and it's only, you can only really successfully get past that when you actually start to introduce councils to talk to each other. So one of the benefits, hopefully, of bringing an independent organisation like ourselves in is that we have a very big black book of other councils that we've worked with. So we tend to actually point people like Gavin to his peers in other organisations, or service leaders to their peers in other organisations, so that they're not taking facts from a consultancy, because we're a consultancy. They're speaking to other people who've been through a similar journey, and then you create a bit more of a sense of togetherness and understanding that actually our context is broadly similar. So I should listen to the benchmarking stats that are coming from you. Does that make sense?
And that fits my experience a while ago now in the education sector, Gavin. Are you actually linking in with other city and other councils to, in effect, follow that through?
Absolutely, because I think, and Alex knows this is a particular bugbear of mine. I don't understand why, as local authorities, we don't do more together, frankly, because we do have nuances, and we will argue we have nuances and we're special, but fundamentally we're offering the same services. So you know, something like planning, which is a quite statutory led in terms of it, we can't be that different in how we deliver it. So yeah, certainly I'm a strong believer, and we reach out to colleagues where we can. We've got quite a good network of IT managers across the Hampshire and Isle of Wight area. We've got some good forums, particularly around the AI side, but we do reach out. I think we could do more as a sector, really, to just drop the fact that we're not that different from each other. So
well, with that in mind, and who knows who's on the call, because I know we've got a lot of people on this webinar, and hopefully a lot to join. I really must draw it to a close. We have run over time. I apologize for anyone that is hanging on for us, and if you've left, then you get a recording of this. A huge thank you for both yourself, Alex, and Gavin. Thank you very much indeed. As always,
Pleasure.
very enlightening, and you guys have brought it to life. And the transformation side from what you ran through, Alex, is great. And actually the implementation, Gavin, was terrific to bring that together. So thank you very much indeed.